Whoa. Well, crew and cohorts. Cohorts. That's not what I wanted. Co-conspirators. Maybe we should try that again. Hello, crew and co-conspirators. Co-conspirators isn't rolling off the tongue. All right, well, first YouTube video, gonna do a tutorial, show you how to use Illustrator to make sweet blocks on your graffiti. Let's go ahead and just dig into it. Ooh. All right, let's give this a go. So here's sort of an example of what we're going to try and show you how to do today. This is some sweet letters painted by Saber that I was able to turn into 3D. And so you can see if I zoom in, it's got all kinds of things going on in the block. But this is pretty advanced, so we're gonna start with very, very simple. So here we have 3 letters, A, B, and C. So what we're going to do is see how to add the 3D block onto these elements. So if I select them all and go to Effect, there's 3D materials. There is a set of different 3D materials that I can do, and then there's 3D Classic. I might touch on 3D Classic at the very end, but right now we're going to talk mostly about Extrude and Bevel. When you hit Extrude and Bevel, you get this panel. You can also bring this panel up in Windows with 3D materials. Closed it, but if I went here, I can bring up 3D materials. I'm going to go ahead and dock this over here with my layers. I actually want that in the end. So then if I bring all that up, this I want there, I can switch between layers and 3D. Okay. So right now, if I go to 3D materials, as I have, all of them have an extrusion. So 3D materials in object, extrusion. If it's plane, they're going to go plane. Right now, I've only the A selected. If I go revolve, it's going to revolve that. If I go inflate, it will inflate. But what we're going to talk about right now is extrude. And the first thing that you have is depth. And so you can see that the depth is increasing the depth. Now also, maybe I want that A to be in front of the B. You can see in the layers that that A is at the bottom. If I bring it to the top, it will then be in front of the B. If I then take the B and go back to the 3D materials and give it a block, starting C, it's behind the C. If I move it back, C can go over. And we can do things with that. Now, if ever you get the 3D on something and you want to remove it, you can go to this panel, which is the properties panel, and it will say 3D material, and you can just remove the 3D material. You have to have everything selected. So let's go back there now because I had. Let's just select the A, remove that, and then select the B, and we'll remove that. Okay. So if we are to select all 3 and group them, then when we put the 3D on, it will apply it to all 3 elements. So this was something that took me a while to learn. If you haven't grouped them and you put that on individuals, then they'll be able to move around. So let's look at this. We go to the 3D material, we hit extrude, and now as I extrude, it's going to do it universally. So more depth, just going to keep making depth. Now, maybe this isn't the way you want your block. So there's rotation here, and I tend to zero this out to start. Now it looks like it's not extruded at all. I can crank this up to as high as I want. And the thing is, the block is just going straight back in space. So if in the first slider here, I can pivot to whatever I like. I have found 20 to be a sweet spot. But really, you know, it's, do you want to see the top of the block? Do you want to see the bottom of the block? And then the second slider will spin you around. And the third slider goes counterclockwise or clockwise. To move. So those are the main ones that you want. And then there is a materials tab. The key with the materials tab is it will apply the materials on to your element, and it doesn't really care what color the element is or the letters are to begin with. So it's really, you're choosing that as your material. You can always go back to the base material, which will allow you to see the color that you originally picked. One last thing is we're talking about color. If you choose to put a line, you will see the block becomes the color of your line that is on the outside. And so as you sort of maybe bump up your line, that we go ahead and have a line. And you can see the order now. If I wanted that B to be on top of the C, I could lift that layer order, but because it's a group, they're all together at the same plane. The other interesting thing is sometimes as you're working, you want to see the 3D. If you are to take a layer and move it out of the group, you'll notice it becomes flat again. And so then I could go and say, I want to add a extra part on here, right? And I could then add a little element. If I then select it and actually move it back into the group, I can reclaim my 3D. And this was a super save, because oftentimes I would stop and want to play around with the 3D. So if I were to go and create just a little square like this that is outside and I move it into the layers, it'll be extruded. Now I could actually take all the layers out and I still have the elements of the 3D that I created. And I could then also, if I wanted multiple groups, I could duplicate this group and apply that same styling to two different letters. Now, if we turn the squares off, they do jump a little bit. It applies it to the group, so things happen. But now if I grab this group and I bring it over the A, you can see I was able to now, again, have the same 3D, but the elements are just different. And so this may be something you want to do. All right, so that was getting kind of into the weeds. We're going to jump cut into just one last thing I want to show you, and then we'll actually call this good. Need to head home for the night, evening. So I'll show you how to change the lighting, because that, I think, the other important part to see. So let's go ahead and do that. One last thing I wanted to show you was how to change the lighting. So here again, we have our letters. I've brought them back to all be in one group, so the lighting will affect the whole group. But as we've said, there's the object, the materials, and the lighting. And we haven't talked about lighting yet. We've talked about objects. We briefly touched on materials. I don't use the materials a lot. I mostly used object to move things around and give us interesting block angle. But when you go to lighting, you have an option to sort of change where the light is going, because in any painting, you choose where the light is coming from, and that's going to affect the shadow that is on the block. So in lighting, there are some presets. There is the standard, which is to the top right. There's diffused, which is going to give you a diffused light. I don't use that very much. There is also a top left, which is going to be over here. And then there's a directly to the right, which is not top or bottom. But there's also the sliders again. And so you can increase the amount of light or decrease the amount of light. And you can change the rotation. So you can make the angle pretty much whatever you want. You can also change the height. So if we look again, there's also softness, which I think is independent of these top set. And then there is sort of ambient light, which is even in the shadow area, you can add light. So in the shadows, maybe there's reflected light. You can get this in case you don't want too dark of a shadow. Or if you want a dark shadow, you might bring that down and bring the intensity up on the light, and that will give you more contrast. Okay, and then we can rotate. Let's go back to the top left, our standard. You can see if we go from standard, you can see the values, and then those values will change. So -135 here, this rotation is the left, whereas the right is 145. So if I go all to the one side, you get all the way across. You can create super exciting different block shadows. And that's the other trick that will end you in a place like this. So today I've also been working on this piece that Ater did. Here you can just see, here's the sketch that he did, and I was creating the vectors. So if we select all, I tend to create each letter in a different color so that I know what's going on. If I then were to group those and add the 3D material, I zero them out. Okay, and so if we go back and turn on our sketch, you can see as we rotate this up, rotate maybe that over. If we move this up, you can actually see as you bring it down that the different letters are in different orientations here. So we're going to have to muck with this quite a bit. But that's an exciting another piece that I'm working on. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any other questions, lay them on me and we'll maybe make another video. We'll see. Here it is. Hey! All right, thanks.